Hello YouTubers! Today I'm going to show you how to make a realistic looking stump cake, and then we're going to decorate it for a home for our gnomes. It's really cute. It's a great project. If you've never covered a cake in fondant before, it's very forgiving. Let's go ahead and get it started. To start our cake, I have rolled out some white fondant to 1/8 of an inch thick. All the fondant that we're going to use is going to be 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to make it slightly larger than the top of the cake, and I'm just going to use a pizza cutter to cut around my cake pan. I've got my circle cut out here, and all the scraps that are left, you want to just fold them up and put them aside. I've got my cake here, and I've already gone ahead and frosted it with chocolate buttercream. Don't overfrost your cake. Just put a light layer of frosting all over it and in between. And I've had it in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes. And we're going to go ahead and put our fondant on top of it. And I'm just going to start with my hand here to smooth it out a bit. Then I'm going to take a fondant smoother and go around it. We want to make sure it's adhered to our cake. If you don't have a fondant smoother, that's okay. Just use your hand. We just want to make sure that our fondant is not going to slip on our cake. I'm just going to go around and trim off the excess fondant, even with the edge of my cake. Next, I'm going to take the end of an artist paintbrush. If you have fondant tools, you can use a sculpting tool. What we want to do is make the impressions of our tree rings around our fondant. So we're just going to press down. We don't want to cut all the way through the fondant. We just want to go around in circles, leaving an impression. We're ready to paint the fondant on top of our cake, and you're going to need a chip brush. It's a hard bristled paint brush, and you can pick them up at any paint store. And I've mixed a little vodka with an Americolor gold, and it's really not gold, it's more of a brownish yellow. Just go around in concentric circles. I've let my paint dry for just a few minutes, and here I have some straight vodka, and I have a dab of chocolate brown Americolor gel color, and I didn't even rinse my paintbrush off. So I'm going to dip it in the vodka and then add a little bit of the food color to it, and I'm going to wipe a lot of it off onto a paper towel, and then I'm going to take it and go again around in concentric circles here around my cake. I may go back over it and put a few more brown highlights in it, but we put the gold down because the top of a stump is kind of a golden brown color, and then we get some nice brown highlights with adding the chocolate brown. So we're going to let this set for about an hour, and then we'll move on to covering the sides of our cake. I measured the height of my cake and added 1/4 of an inch because I want the fondant to stick up just slightly above the top of the cake. And I've rolled out some more fondant, and basically I eyeballed a rectangle out of it that's 4.5 inches tall, and I don't know, however wide that is. And I put the scraps that I cut off aside, and now we're going to attach this to the side of the cake. So you want to have your paintbrush and some water handy, because you're probably going to need it. More than likely your buttercream has crusted, so you're going to need to add a little water onto the back of your fondant to get it to adhere to your cake. I've got my first piece of fondant on, and as you can see, it's not perfectly smooth. I didn't spend time really smoothing out my frosting a lot, and that is perfectly fine. Remember, this is a tree stump. Then I'm going to take an artist brush and push it in at the bottom of the fondant. This gives some texture like you get on a tree stump, as well as helps the fondant adhere to the cake. And the same thing at the top. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cover the rest of it the same way. If there's little gaps between your pieces of fondant, don't worry about it, because we're going to put yet another layer of fondant on our cake. Our gnomes need a door for their house. I cut a circle out of brown fondant, and then I put some lines in it to make it look more like planks. And I went around with the back of a knife and put some random lines in to give it kind of a wood grain effect. I want this to look different than the rest of the stump, so I'm going to give it a whitewash. I've got a little white food coloring, and then I have a wadded up piece of paper towel here, and I'm going to just dip my paper towel in there, and then I want to take most of it off, and we're just going to put it on in an up and down motion. We don't want to put a lot on, we just want to look a bit weathered. Our door is complete. I used a little black fondant to make a couple of hinges and a knob for our door. I also rolled out a thin snake of brown fondant to trim out the door. Now we're ready to start using the scraps that we have here. And this is going to be our bark. It's dried out a little bit, which is what we want. And there's really no rhyme or reason to this. We're just going to take our scraps and we're going to just glue them around our cake. Now, they're pretty dry, so you're going to need a brush and some water to attach them. This is the way we're going to hide any seams. We'll cover them with our bark. When you're working with your fondant scraps, you want to make sure you have rough edges, and when it's drier, as you peel pieces off, you get these nice rougher edges than you get when you're working with fresh fondant. Also, you can use a knife to slice into it, put some lines in it. You really want to make your fondant scraps look rough. Same thing if you're using fresher fondant. When you're putting your bark on your cake, be sure to overlap your pieces so it's more three-dimensional. You want to add some knots to your tree, and just take some of your dried fondant and form it into a ball. And because it's dry, you'll get cracks and crevices, which is what you want for a knot for your tree. You can also make roots the same way, just making larger ball and forming it into an interesting shape. I attached all my bark and I let it set for about 2 hours to make sure it's all attached. And now we're ready to paint. We are painting with vodka, and a lot of people worry if they're going to be serving kids, but it's perfectly safe. All the alcohol evaporates. And again, we're going to paint it the same way we did the top. In the little bowl, I've got some straight vodka and a little bit of brown food coloring. And we're going to paint in an up and down motion. We're going to use our chip brush for as much of it as we can. Then we'll get in with an artist brush to get the parts that we can't get with the chip brush. I'll go ahead and finish up the painting, and then we'll be ready to put it on another cake board and do some decorating. Here is our completed stump cake. I let the paint dry for about another 2 hours. I went ahead and attached the door. I didn't want it to harden completely, and I just attached it with a little bit of water. I think it looks really cool. I've put it on a 10 by 10 cake board. Now it's time to decorate. I've covered my cake board in chocolate buttercream, and the first thing I'm going to put on is some toadstools, rocks, and some paving stones that we made in our previous video. And you can put any type of decorations that you want to fit whatever theme you're doing, whether it's fairies or gnomes or elves, whatever. And so I'm going to go ahead and put on some toadstools and rocks. Now I'm going to put some moss around the tree. To make the moss, I just ground up some graham crackers in my food processor, put those in a baggie, and then add a bunch of green food color, and then shake your bag and massage it until you get all of your graham crackers coated in green. It makes really nice moss. Next, I'm going to put some dirt around the tree. These are just Oreo cookies that I put in a food processor. To give our cake a little more greenery, I added a couple of simple bushes to the cake. Making bushes for your cake is really easy. Just take a ball of green fondant. You can also shape it into a cone for something more like a topiary. And just use a clean pair of scissors and just start cutting just a little bit into the fondant. You really just want to give it some shape, not really cut real deep into it. And you just want to go all the way around your fondant. I wanted to add a pop of color onto the stump, so I made some simple pink flowers with leaves and just placed them here and there around the cake. The cake wouldn't be complete without at least a few insects, so I made a few of these little ladybugs. They're actually just a red M&M, and I used a toothpick and some black food color and drew the little head and wings. If you have a black edible marker, it would have been a heck of a lot easier. So I'm going to put just a few of these on the cake. Our Gnome Home Stump cake is done, except for, of course, our gnomes. And here is our completed cake. I hope you enjoyed today's video on how to make this Gnome Home Stump cake. I think it's really cute. Please join our channel. You can click the link up above if you'd like. We hope to see you back soon.